Hey guys, welcome to our Tuesday night message. Glad to have you guys here. It's going to be, I think, our last one for this semester. So thanks for tuning in and listening and being a part of CSF all this semester. We know it's been a rocky one, but it's been great to have you guys here. We're going to be here today in Matthew 27 and 28. The last two chapters of Matthew. So if you couldn't guess, we're going to be talking about the crucifixion and the resurrection today. And I encourage you guys, even if you need to pause it right here or right after this, you should really just read through Isaiah 53 and Psalm 22 because it's referenced a lot in these two chapters. A lot of the Bible, a lot of the New Testament is about hearkening back to things in the Old Testament because they're trying to show you, hey, look, this has been the plan along. This is something that this isn't a new thing. We're not some new cult. But this is the culmination of what the Old Testament was trying to tell us. This is the Messiah. This is, everything we've hoped for. And they're trying to show you that through the Old Testament writings. And this specifically, a lot has to do with, there's more than just, that's referenced here than just those two, but they're very prominent in this episode, or, in the crucifixion story. Leading up to chapter 27, because we didn't go through these we have the Pharisees obviously plotting against Jesus. They get Judas on their side to give him up. We have the Last Supper, which is funny because, not funny necessarily, but Jesus goes through what's about to happen with his disciples. He really prepares them for what's going to happen, and they don't understand it. He tells them he's going to die and what it's for, what its meaning will be. But so often, as things are, hindsight's 20/20, and they really don't understand what's going on until after everything has been finished and completed. Because as much time as they spent with Jesus, the disciples still couldn't seem to break themselves from that Jewish mindset of what the Messiah was. Until everything was completed, they still had this Jewish mindset that the Messiah was going to be this great conqueror who's going to come back with military force, overthrow these evil empires that you see throughout the Old Testament and then now here in the New Testament, whether it was Babylon, Assyria, Persia, Alexander's empire, and now Rome, which is the current occupier of Israel. They thought that the Messiah was going to be this guy to come in, rally the troops, just wipe out the Gentiles, essentially, and then set up a new earthly kingdom where, there would be all, Jews would be supreme, and they would be, essentially, everyone would be kings. And we know that that's not what the Messiah was. It's not what it would be like. So just keep that in mind, again, as we go through this, and as we see the reactions of these people during the crucifixion scene to Jesus, because it informs a lot of why they're reacting the way they are. After that, we have Peter denying that he will deny Christ. Gethsemane, where Jesus prays, and we can see the weight of what's about to happen on Jesus' shoulders as he asks God to take it away from him if it is at all possible, which he knows and we know it's not. But Jesus is okay with showing God, being God, showing him what he's feeling, and it's important for us to see that this isn't just a light thing, that this is weighty. Then we see that Jesus is arrested and led away and tried before the Sanhedrin, where he essentially says, yes, I am the Messiah and I am God. You see he says to them that he connects himself with the Son of Man figure in Daniel, saying that he's going to sit at the right hand of God, and he's coming on the clouds of heaven, which are all attributes of God himself, which is why they think he's a blasphemer, because they don't believe that. And then we go through the story of Peter disowning Jesus, which takes us to 27, and the crucifixion story. We're actually going to start in 11. 1 through 10, verses 27, 1 through 10 is actually about Judas's guilt and his suicide over betraying Jesus. And not that this isn't important, there's a lot there too that connects to Old Testament prophecy. It's just not what we're going to focus on today. But we're going to start here in 11. In the first section, we're going to read 11 to 26. So, meanwhile, Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, "Are you king of the Jews?" "You have said so," Jesus replied. When he was accused by the chief priests and the elders, he gave no answer. Then Pilate asked him, "Don't you hear the testimony they are bringing against you?" Jesus made no reply, not even to a single charge, to the great amazement of the governor. Now it was the governor's custom at the festival to release a prisoner chosen by the crowd. At the time, a well-known prisoner whose name was Jesus Barabbas, or they had a well-known prisoner whose name was Jesus Barabbas, pardon me. So when the crowd gathered, Pilate asked them, "Which one do you want me to release to you, Jesus Barabbas or Jesus who is called the Messiah?" For he knew that it was out of self-interest that they handed Jesus over to them. While Pilate was sitting on the judge's seat, his wife sent him a message saying, "Don't have anything to do with that innocent man, for I have suffered a great deal today in a dream because of him." But the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowd to ask for Barabbas and to have Jesus executed. "Which of the two do you want me to release to you?" asked the governor. "Barabbas," they answered. What will I do then with Jesus who is called the Messiah?" Pilate asked. They all answered, "Crucify him." "Why? What crime has he committed?" asked Pilate. But they shouted all the louder, "Crucify him." Pilate saw that he was getting nowhere, but that instead an uproar was starting. He took water, washed his hands in front of the crowd, and said, I'm innocent of this man's blood." He said, "It is your responsibility." All the people answered, "His blood is on us and our children." Then he released Barabbas to them, but he had Jesus flogged and handed him over to be crucified. So in this first section, we're going to look at three people, or two people in a group of people. The first one is, I want to focus on, is the chief priests and the crowd. We see that they clearly don't care about what truth is, what the truth of the matter is. We know that because even Pilate says that he knew it was out of self-interest that they handed Jesus over to him. We saw even throughout Matthew that up to this point, Jesus was really speaking out against the chief priests and the Pharisees and how they've been abusing the name of God for their own personal gain. We talked about that when Matt talked about hypocrisy. And Jesus was not gentle with them during that part. So they just wanted to get him out. And we see Jesus responding by not responding. He knows their heart. He knows that they're just trying to get him to rise to the bait, to answer back in any way that they can use to incriminate him. But knowing that they're not seeking truth, or they don't really care what's going on, he refuses to engage with that kind of dialogue, because it's not real. He knows it. The chief priests obviously know what they're doing, and even Pontius Pilate knows what's going on. The second person is Pilate himself. Pilate is the governor of Judea at the time, and Genea is not an easy assignment. Uh, it was, you're essentially occupying a group of people who have very solid, as we've seen throughout the Bible actually, a very solid core identity, and they do not like being, they don't like having another, essentially, foreign dictator over them. There were numerous groups of people who were constantly rebelling in this area at the time against the Romans. And it was kind of a dangerous assignment if you were a Roman soldier. I mean, depending on where you were, if you weren't protecting yourself, you could just be dragged into an alley and left there for dead. Or if you're out marching around, you could be ambushed. From the Roman sensibility, a lot of what these Jews were doing at the time would seem like terrorism to them, like in our same minds today. And it would have been really frustrating. And as a Roman governor, Pilate, all he cares about is order. He doesn't want there to be an uproar. He likes having this, governorship to himself. This is a place where he can advance his political position. At the time, when you get a governorship, this is how you make back money on your campaigns, in your political campaigns, because you spend a lot of money to get elected, and then you get a governorship, and that's where you make your money back on tax revenue, which is why taxation is a big problem too throughout the New Testament. And when things are in an uproar, it's a problem for you, because if you're not doing a good job, you can be taken out of office by the emperor or the Senate, and you don't get your money. So it's doubly bad when there's bad stuff happening, which is why we see Pontius Pilate knows that this man's an innocent man. He knows that he's done nothing to deserve crucifixion at that. But when he sees how much of a uproar is happening, all he wants is order, so he just kind of gives in. And we see him wash his hands literally of Jesus' blood, which we know you can't really do. Again, Pilate's looking at this from a secular point of view as this man's just being killed because he's a rebel. We know that Jesus is allowing himself to be crucified for humanity, for not the Jewish rebellion against Rome, but our human rebellion against God, which has been going on since Genesis 3, since that first sin against God by Adam and Eve. It's been plaguing humanity. So it's impossible for us to just wash our hands of that guilt, even though, many people do. That's like one of the biggest roadblocks I've seen for people is not understanding what sin is, and who's sinned against. And oftentimes you'll hear the response, I'm not a sinner. I've done nothing wrong to deserve the wrath of God. And we see that response by Pilate. And the last person we look at here is not necessarily a response, but just what happens to him, which we should really connect with relation to our sin, is that Barabbas, who is the rebel, they even call him a rebel. He's one of these people who would have been ambushing Roman soldiers and stuff like that. That's why you get crucified. It's to show that you cannot rebel against the Roman power. It's to show that this is what happens to people who cause problems. And although he doesn't say anything, Barabbas is actually a really powerful figure. He represents kind of our position, really. We were the rebels. We are the rebels against God, and yet Jesus is switching places. This is someone we can connect with, because Jesus is switching places and taking on the physical punishment of what rebellion is. So we'll move on here. Read through 27 to 44. Then the governor's soldiers took Jesus to the praetorium, gathered a whole company of soldiers around him. They stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him, then twisted together a crown of thorns and set it on his head. They put a staff in his right hand. Then they knelt in front of him, and they mocked him, saying, "Hail the King of the Jews." They spit on him. They took a staff and struck him on the head again and again. They mocked him. They took off the robe, put his own clothes on him, and they led him away to crucify him. And before we go on, I learned something about this that I didn't think of before. But usually, if you've seen certain renditions in film or on plays of this scene, you see like 5 soldiers, right? Or like even just 1 or 2 guys that are beating up Jesus. Here in Matthew, it says that they got a whole company of soldiers, which is, depending on what they're talking about, a century is like 80 men. But I looked it up, and they were talking about, the Greek word talking about somewhere between 500 and 600 guys who are surrounding Jesus and mocking him. So like that just changed it for me, because like it's really a horrific thing if you think about what's going on here. Jesus being surrounded by around 600 guys, just taking turns hitting him and mocking him. But you see that they're using this regal imagery, but as kind of a parody of that. But you'll see throughout here that this is actually like Jesus' real coronation. Because even though this is all really morbid, this is where Jesus shows his power as king, and his power over death and sin. So just keeping that in mind as we keep going here in 32. As they were setting out, there's a man named from Cyrene named Simon, and they forced him to carry the cross. They came to a place called Golgotha, which means place of the skull. Pardon me. There they offered Jesus a drink mixed with gall, but after tasting it, he refused to drink it. When they had crucified him, they divided up his clothes and cast lots. Sitting down, they kept watch over him, and above his head they placed a written charge against him: "This is Jesus, King of the Jews." 2 rebels were crucified with him, who passed on his left and his right. Those who passed hurled insults at him, shaking their heads and saying, "You who are going to destroy the temple and build it up in 3 days, save yourself. Come down from the cross if you are the Son of God." In the same way, the chief priests and teachers of the law and elders mocked him. He saved others, but he can't save himself. He is the King of Israel. Let him come down from the cross, and we will believe in him. He trusts in God. Let God rescue him now if he wants him. For he has said, "I am the Son of God." In the same way, the rebels who were crucified with him heaped insults on him. Here we see Jesus being offered gall, which is kind of like a mixture of stuff that is meant to ease pain, because they kind of want, that's not out of mercy, they just kind of want to get this over with, the Romans. So like they give him this thing to help him ease it, so they can essentially so he can give up, because that's how you die in crucifixion. You suffocate. So this would, but we see Jesus rejecting the gall, because he, some people say it's because he wants to bear that weight. He does not want to forsake any part of the punishment that he's taking for us. And if you see, he's crucified in between 2 rebels, other ones, because he's taking on the cross. That cross, that post was dug in already, set up for Barabbas. This is Barabbas's cross again, physically showing us where God is spiritually taking place, the punishment for us. We see again this regal imagery, um, this regal parody where they say he's king of the Jews and they're mocking him. I think another thing that's funny is you can see that the priests say, if he comes down, if he saves himself, we'll believe then. See, but they're mocking him. They know they can't. And here's the thing: they've all seen Jesus do miracles. They've seen him preach truth up to this point. Do you really think that if he came down from the cross, then that's the thing that would make me believe? We see people say stuff like that all the time. Like, if I see God riding in the clouds, I will believe that. If I see God face to face, I'll see that, or I'll believe. But it's really a heart condition, hardened against God. I mean, I've seen. I think it's Richard Dawkins, who's like a famous atheist, if you don't know, and he has this line where he says, I used to say if I saw, God riding in the clouds, or if God appeared to me, that's when I would believe. But then he said, no, I don't, but now I don't think I would believe at all. I would be more likely forget God, that's a hallucination, or that there's some other explanation for what I'm seeing. And we can see there that it's come to the point where no matter what's shown, no matter what's done, the methodology of these people is to always say that God is a lie, that Jesus is a liar. And that's the same heart that the Pharisees have right here. It's also, again, calling back to the scene where he's talking to Pilate and the chief priests. Part of why Jesus doesn't respond. He knows that they're not there to learn what the truth is. And going on into the next part, we have 45 to 56. From noon until 3 in the afternoon, darkness came over the land. About 3 in the afternoon, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani, which means, my God, why have you forsaken me? When some of those standing there heard this, they said, he's calling to Elijah. Immediately one ran and got a sponge. He filled it with wine vinegar and put it on his staff and offered drink to Jesus. The rest said, now leave him alone. Let us see if Elijah comes to save him. When Jesus cried out again in a loud voice, he gave up his spirit. At that moment, the curtain of the temple tore in two from top to bottom. The earth shook and the rocks split, and the tombs broke open, and the bodies of many holy people who had died were raised to life. And they came out of the tombs after Jesus' resurrection and went into the holy city and appeared to many people. When the centurion and those who were guarding with him saw the earthquake and all that happened, they were terrified and exclaimed, surely he was the Son of God. Many women were there watching from a distance. They followed Jesus from Galilee to care for his needs. Among them were Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of Zebedee's sons. Here we see Jesus. This is again why I said in the beginning you should read Psalm 22, because here you see him referencing that and saying, my God, why have you forsaken me? It's literally the if you knew your Bible, he wouldn't say Psalm 22 because they didn't have it numbered like that. They would say the psalm that says, so he's literally asking them, go and see what this says, and you'll see that it's said a truth about me. And we see this throughout this whole scene, like when the soldiers divide his clothes, casting lots. That's specifically in the Old Testament, and it's referenced here. And it's funny because the people around him don't understand what he's referencing. Their eyes are kind of blind to what Jesus is doing there. And so they think he's calling to Elijah, and they say, leave him alone, again mocking, saying that, let's see if Elijah comes and saves him. And at the moment when Jesus dies, we see this thing happen where the curtain of the temple is torn in two. And this is the curtain that's separating normal people from the Holy of Holies, where in the temple where God is supposed to reside. And this is an astronomical, insane, crazy thing if you really think about it. Up to this point, it was thought, God is so holy. There was only 2 times a year that the head priest could go in there, and if he was not ritually pure and cleaned, and then went before God, he would die. And they literally had a rope tied around his waist in case that happens, so they could draw him back out, because no one could go in there to get him. That's how significant this is. That when Jesus died, this division between us and God broke. And now we can go boldly before the throne and actually have a personal relationship with Christ. I've been reading this book, Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus by Nabil Qureshi. And it's about a Muslim guy, Nabil, and his journey to finding Christ. And if you know anything about Islam, they still have this very holy view of God. Not that we don't think he's holy, but they very far apart and separated view of God. And one of the questions Nabil has in this is, how is it conceivable that Allah, the highest of all beings, would enter into this world? This world's filthy and sinful. How did he eat? How did he grow fatigue? How did he sweat, spill blood, and finally to be nailed to a cross? I cannot believe this. God deserves more. His majesty is far greater. But then he asked this question. But what if his majesty is not important to him as his children are? And that was really crazy to me as I was reading this. What if God's majesty is not as important to him as his people are, as his children are? Which is why we see all of this happening. That is, this separation between God and his holiness and us is broken. We're allowed to enter now. And we see how momentous it is because the earth is shaking. Dead people are raised to life. And we've talked about that before, actually. I remember Chase having a question about that. This is just how momentous of what's happening, how momentous it is. What's interesting is that it's not any of the religious leaders or the Jews who see what's going on. The first people right after this happens to recognize what's truly happening is the people who are crucifying him. The centurion and those guarding said, surely this is the Son of God. And then we have the burial of Jesus, and the chief priests being afraid that the disciples are going to come and rob the tomb so that they can say he's risen. We're going to pick back up actually in 28. And then I'm just going to read 28 real quick, because I feel like it's weird to talk about just the death of Jesus and not his resurrection. They kind of go in tandem, because if Jesus was just dead, Christianity still would not mean anything, even if we do believe, that it was for the forgiveness of sins. If he didn't raise again, it would be a problem. So I'm going to read here all the way through. After the Sabbath at dawn, on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to have a look at the tomb. There was a violent earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven, and going to the tomb, rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothes were white as snow. The guards were so afraid of him that they shook and became like dead men. The angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you are looking for Jesus, who was crucified. He is not here, he has arisen. just as he said. Come and see the place where he lay, then go quickly and tell his disciples. He is risen from the dead, and he is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him. Now I have told you." So the woman hurried away from the tomb, afraid yet filled with joy, and ran to tell the disciples. Suddenly Jesus met them. "Greetings," he said. They came to him, clasped his feet, and worshipped him. Jesus said, "Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers. Go to Galilee. There they will see me." And then while the women were on their way, some of the guards went into the city and reported to the chief priest everything that happened. When the chief priests had met the elders, they devised a plan. They gave the soldiers a large sum of money, telling them, "You are to say his disciples came during the night and stole him away while you were asleep. If this report gets to the governor, we will satisfy him and keep you out of trouble." So the soldiers took the money as was instructed, and did as it was instructed. And this story has been widely circulated among the Jews to this day. Now, 16. Then the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain where Jesus had told them to go. And they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. Then Jesus came to them and said, "All authority in heaven and earth has been given to me. Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to obey everything I have commanded to you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age." And this is the completion of the story. And honestly, this is the good news. Our religion would be rather morbid if our good news was that Jesus had died. But our good news is not just that, but is that he rose again. That we can say truly that he is God, that he has saved us from ourselves, from our sin, and that he'll be coming back one day. Just to, fix this broken world, just as he fixed our brokenness. I think it's funny here that if you have any doubt, there's clearly an empty tomb. We know that because even we see it here that the story circulated among the Jews is that the disciples stole the body. And in the Talmud, it's the same story. They actually have it written down. The Talmud's Jewish writing that's very authoritative, and it's commentating. It's commentaries. And one of them talking about Jesus says, "Yeah, the disciples came and stole the body." But what that admits is that there's an empty tomb, and an empty tomb that, to the best reliable tradition, nearly all of the disciples were willing to die to say that they had seen Jesus. You don't usually die for a lie. If you know for a fact that something is a lie, that you didn't see Jesus, you're not going to die for it, right? Maybe one's crazy, but this is 11 people who all died, or nearly all of them died to say that, and many others who had seen him in other of the Gospels you'll see. But the reason 28 is important is this, other than the resurrection, is Jesus' final words to us, what we usually call the Great Commission. We can have a very personalistic view of Christianity. This is for me, this is my thing, everyone has their own thing. But you have to realize how, again, astronomical, how great this is. This isn't just for us. Like, it'd be very greedy for you to say, "I have this beautiful salvation here. I have Jesus." And then just be okay with that. That wasn't Jesus' final words. His final words were to go and make disciples of all nations, to tell people about what's happened here. This whole 28 is about going and telling. The angel tells the women who come to the tomb, "Go and tell the disciples that this has happened. This is This is everything we've been waiting for. This is really the culmination of all of history. We now can be a new creation, and not the old man that we once were. Yeah, we'll talk about this tonight. I'll see you guys there. And again, read through this yourself, and try and read through Isaiah 53 and Psalm 22, and we can have a great conversation. So I'll see you guys there.